Welcome everybody to another one of my podcasts. Thank you very much for tuning in, and I am delighted to say I have the wonderful Mary Henderson all the way from Australia on today. Mary, good evening, I think, your end.
Yeah, good evening, Alex. It is good evening, you're right.
And thank you so much for giving me some of your time, and actually more importantly, my listeners to hear your story. So let's start with that. Who are you? What, why, when, where? What's your journey to us talking today, I guess?
Yes, absolutely. Well, I always start, when people ask me that question, Alex, I always have a little bit of a think, especially when I'm with a CEO, and I always say, let me just think at what part of my story I actually want to start from, because there are so many chapters. But I live in Australia. I have I have a corporate background in the IT sector, specifically in sales. And in year 2000, I hit the height of my career in the tech industry. It was just the most amazing time of my life. But I also came face to face with personal branding. And for me, that was, it was a really big aha moment. And I think also, Alex, it was the impetus to where I'm at today. It made me see the importance of positioning yourself as a specialist, and what it could do for your career. And for me, it did future-proof my career. I then was headhunted by an American company, and I had a significant sales team. I had over 30 people. I was director of sales for APAC for an American company called Belkin. And I turned my entire sales team into personal brands. I mean, I really understood the notion of it. I wasn't interested in job descriptions. I had no interest in that at all. I knew back then the limitations of a job description, but I knew the expansion of a personal brand, because it allowed a human being to come to a working environment and be unapologetically themselves. So they were all given permission to show up in their natural state. And I then matched that personality and their passions with the actual customer portfolio. And we grew that business from 4 million to 54 million in 48 months. Not one person left the company in that 48 months in my sales team, except two that I had to unfortunately let go of, just for misconduct. But fast forward, from there, I then started my own software development company. I was immersed in the digital space since 2005. I still am in the space. And then in 2012, I merged my software development company with a creative agency. And I took 12 months off, Alex, because I realized when I had my software development company that was not what I was meant to be doing. There were aspects of it that I really loved. I found a niche in the academic sector, which was all we served, and built some really cool web-based applications. But it wasn't what I wanted to do for the rest of my life. And I think it's important to confront those demons when they start playing havoc in your life, which is exactly what was happening with me. So I took 12 months off. I had my second child, and I just decided that this is just not where I wanted. This is not where I wanted to be. I had 3 amazing mentors that literally held my hand for 12 months, because I was curious to ask myself, who am I? Like, as a human, physiologically, what am I? And I was beyond self-help. But the reason why I'm sharing that story is because in that 12-month period, through that inner journey that I had experienced and was very fortunate enough to experience, I started to see one of my mentors asked me to basically just freehand write everything that I could possibly remember from the age of 0 to 21. And then from 21 to 30. So I basically had this story full of chapters, and I started to see a pattern emerging. And what I found was that at the points in my life that I remembered where I was happy, certain things were playing out. And when I was incredibly frustrated or sad or angry or whatever, there were other things that were playing out. And over and above all of that, I just realized that when I was happy, there were certain traits, there were certain things that Mary was doing that were natural to her that really made me show up as the best version of myself. And this for me was the start of understanding that personal branding was not about being famous. Personal branding was about showing up in your natural state. And that's where I developed my personal branding algorithm, and then realized in that 12-month period, hang on a minute, I love 3 things in my life. Personal branding, I get what that means from a complete, with different eyes. I understand how to build digital assets, and I understand sales. Now, if I merge those 3 things together, can I solve a complex problem? And which is what I do today. I now commercialize personal brands, and I help people that are transitioning out of corporate, predominantly senior leaders who are going into coaching and consulting, and I help them commercialize their personal brands into business solutions. And that's where I'm at right now.
Wow.
Yeah.
How does one follow that? There's a lot that I want to pick up on what you just shared with me and the audience. So thank you, especially your time at Belkin, because that was early days in terms of kind of LinkedIn and personal branding as even a concept back then. But if we just kind of take a step further back, because personal brand is now pushed everywhere online that you see talking about personal brand, this and that. Doesn't matter what the social media platform is. I kind of guess it's anywhere that you digitally reside. But what is your, based on your experience and what you do now and the people that you work with and you help, what is a personal brand in its simplest form?
In its most simplest form, Alex, it's somebody who has an expertise and wants to position themselves as the go-to person in their industry or their niche, because they are a specialist in specifically one area that they know for sure. It's not a little bit of everything. They have a solution to one complex problem that they know that they can solve, because they can support it with tried and tested methodology, with a tried and tested methodology or a process or a system that they've developed. They can solve a problem, and they know that they can solve a problem because they understand just that little box, that one area that they know inside out. And based on that, when you have a content strategy that overlays that, that's when personal branding starts to, that's when you can position yourself as an authority in that area that you know for sure. But there are certain moving parts, I guess, that one needs to implement in order for that person to be known as the authority. It doesn't just happen. But in its rawest, most basic description, it really is about somebody who can support the problem that they can solve with a system or a methodology.
So could one say that it's kind of subject matter expert version 1.5, 2.0 from
Absolutely.
way back when? Yeah. Okay.
Absolutely. And what it isn't is, it's not, you're absolutely right. So many people talk about personal branding and it's become so cliche, unfortunately, but it is not how many followers you have. It is not about just showing up on LinkedIn and being authentic and just sharing some random story about your dog because someone challenged you to be authentic. I mean, really, it's not that. It's not about vanity metrics, and it's not about being an influencer on Instagram where you've got 1 million followers and the people that are following you have no followers. I mean, it's not that. That's just an illusion that people have painted, and coming from the standpoint of such limited knowledge of actually what personal branding is from a professional standpoint. And you and I are talking about this from a professional standpoint.
Absolutely. I think, you kind of beat me to the punch there on Instagram. I think Instagram has kind of completely bastardized what a personal brand is. It's not this 15 minutes of fame. It's not this, not even this perfect life that you see. And we see obviously the pushback on influencer marketing, if that's a thing, and how that's now not something that it was. But we digress.
Yeah.
So I wanted to roll back to your time at Belkin, and giving the sales team, and this is back in a time, I let people look at your profile, but we're talking 20 years ago now, when sales are sales, right? You turn up to work, you make your number, you go home, and just point you at that. That's when you need to go and do it. So how did you go about convincing or affecting that change that this is what you see the modern salesperson back then, which I'd argue is actually today as well, to do that, not only internally within Belkin to get management to buy into your vision, but then to get the salespeople to buy into your vision?
That is an awesome question. Now, when my MD in Australia first met me, I was, like an alpha female, and I was in your face, and he was not that. So he was, well, on one hand, he didn't get it, but on the other hand, he actually did with, I've got to, give the guy, credit, because he actually did allow me to pursue the vision. Okay. So I had no limitation there whatsoever. But what I had to do was also make the management team actually see the power in what I was about to do and embark on, because it wasn't a cookie cutter sales type of a model. What my model was all about was, you can't build a sales team, and you can't build an extraordinary sales team that's made up of people that want to actually be here if you don't allow them to actually be themselves. So that was the first thing, and they understood that. Conceptually, they understood that. How it was going to be executed was a different thing. But my approach to sales, even back then, Alex, and nothing's changed today, was about building relationships at a channel level, a channel partner level. That was the go-to strategy immediately, because it took out the notion of, oh, you've now got to do the cold calling and find 42, customers per week so we can make our figures. So the approach was very different to what they were used to before I came on board. And when you're building channel partner relationships, it's very, very different to building a relationship with, or trying to build a relationship with 40 or 50 cold calls per week. It's a different approach altogether. Yeah. But there was one thing that I did, and I still do this today, and I believe in the power of collaboration. So it was not a me and them, it was a us. The whole conversation around everything that we did was about us. How can I help you? What can we do together? Who understands how to do this better than you? So let's all join together and let's help one another win this proposal or win this client. So it was really a big collaborative effort. Even my MD was a part of that collaboration. So not even he was, oh, look, I'm here and you're there. It was really a big us type of a scenario. And that's why it worked really, really well. And the other thing is, I gave my team full permission to be subject matter experts. I wanted them to be seen and heard at keynotes or luncheons or networking events. I pushed them into that direction. I thought that was a very, very important move, because I was also at the same time wanting them to future-proof their career. That's my job. That's what great leaders do. They're there to future-proof the career of their team members, because I'm not going to be there forever, and neither are they. And it's funny, because I actually saw one of my employees back then, one of my team members, about 2 years ago, at my son is at a soccer academy, and so was his son at the same soccer academy, and he just happened to, we just happened to cross paths, and he even said, I just can't believe that what you taught me back then, I still use today. And that's the power of, it's not even about leadership, Alex. It really is about understanding who you are at your core and feeling comfortable in your own skin. And I think that's me. That describes me to a T.
Which is interesting because I was at an event yesterday. We were talking about this before we came live, as it were, at the Association of Professional Sales, and we had a lady, Nicole Soames, talking about emotional intelligence and EQ versus IQ, and again, and how that can fit in sales. And part of that very much was, know thyself and understand yourself and allow yourself to be yourself, which is difficult for people, right? That's really, really hard. And
it is.
You and I well know that, although we operate in different spaces, that when you're working with teams of people, be it salespeople, lawyers, accountants, leadership, doesn't matter, getting somebody to actually sit down and do what you did, I guess, over your 12-month break, is have a bit of inward reflection and ask some of those questions, is really, really difficult for people to tackle.
It is. And it's difficult, Alex, because most people are on the hamster wheel, and it's keeping up with the Joneses. No one will get off the hamster wheel if there's a loss of material things. Okay, we're all attached to these material things, but here's the thing about that, is that when you can detach and actually understand who you are at your core and in your natural state, that changes the entire game. Because when you understand that, then you can ask yourself a very simple question: am I in the right job? Am I in the right relationship? Am I pursuing what I really love in this type of an environment? Or am I so far away from it that it's not funny? You can ask those big questions. And the bigger the questions, the closer you move to the person you're always meant to be. It makes life so much easier, and you actually reap incredible rewards, not just financially, but just personally. The people that are drawn to you are completely different to the people that you had in your life versus the people that are wanting to then be a part of your life. And I just think that it is a luxury taking that time off, because it means loss of income. But I always make a joke, and I always say to people, I just wish that there was a law that actually stated at the age of 40, if you haven't taken off 1 year for self-reflection, then you're in deep shit. So I wish that was just a given, but it's not.
But it's interesting if you look at just in kind of the narrative around mental health, and all this kind of thing, and the pressure of being on 24/7, and the impact that this is now now all happening. And my career break was forced upon me in some respects, and actually the best thing that could happen was being made redundant, because that made me take a step back and actually evaluate my life and see what I was going to do. And that has led me on the journey that I'm now now on with the likes of Tim and Adam as well. But it also has given me the freedom to cross paths and meet people like you. And that's the beauty of this, is that when you are kind of given that freedom to do that, the opportunity it presents is absolutely massive. And I believe what we are now seeing is that industry is now seeing this. If you let people be people, yes, of course, you've got to deliver profitability, you've got to deliver your number. You can't lose focus of what we're trying to achieve. But if you've got a happy workforce who feels happy to come to work and can be themselves, I don't care whether it's the janitor all the way through to the CEO, and we'll come through to that in a minute. You're going to have a much better overall output. And I do find it funny when working with sales directors and we talk through this, and they kind of say to me or my colleagues, yeah, but I don't want you to create rock stars of my sales teams. What happens if they leave? I'm like, well, that's got nothing to do with the brand on LinkedIn or anything like that. If they want to leave, that's the conversation with HR, because they're not getting something from you as an employer. That's got nothing to do with them being great on social, or having a brand out there and being invited to talk at events or go to keynotes, etc. And it's that kind of, it's the short-termism, I guess, that sales directors see, because they're thinking, Christ, if they go, I don't hit my number, that impacts
And the thing is, Alex, you just hit a very important point, and that is that, you know, we are seeing more and more senior executives becoming redundant. That's a fact. That's a reality that's happening right in this moment. What, you know, I've met so many C-suites that have been made redundant, that have lost their $300,000, $400,000, $500,000 job, and it's not easy to replace that job title and salary anymore. It's just not. Not only is it not easy, so many large organizations are becoming a very flat structure. So they're not interested in that top heavy anymore. It's happening all around us. So typically when somebody comes to me at that point when they're redundant, I say to them, you've come to me 12 months too late.
Yeah.
I could have helped you position yourself as the go-to person, the specialist in your industry, so that when you were made redundant, you at least had 3 or 4 offers in your inbox the very next day.
Yeah,
you
no,
know,
it's a very valid point, and I was kind of very fortunate that although, you know, I ended up in the situation I was in, it was actually through the vision of the board at my previous company that allowed me to start the journey of social selling, if you will, which is part of this, which then at least got me into this narrative and this conversation. So I kind of had a fighting chance as to, right, now what do I do? I at least have the basics in place. So before we kind of kick on to leadership, because I do want to talk about that. If there are sales directors listening to this, or even, you know, sales reps, I don't really care. What advice would you give to the sales director to kind of think differently about this, and what advice would you give to a sales rep who wants to take this concept to their sales director?
I think that the first thing that I would say is be very clear on an area that you know for sure, or that you're passionate about. So let's look at a tech company. In a tech company, there'll be 3 or 4 different product categories. Let's just say that there's networking, like in Belkin, there's networking and there's peripherals. You know, if you are passionate about networking, make that your lane. Just absolutely eat, breathe, and sleep, and just focus on that product category and know everything about it inside out, know everything about the industry, industry standards, compliance, everything and anything that you need to know about that lane. Become the expert in that domain, so that the world around you also believes that you're an expert in that lane. The second thing is that you, as a salesperson, LinkedIn should become your second best friend. It should be utilized every single day except weekends, or at least at a minimum of 3 times a week, where then you're supporting that lane that you're passionate about. Let's say it's networking, and your content supports that passion, so that now the outside world are now starting to recognize you as the expert in, say, networking. You're not belittling the organization you're working for. You're actually bringing that organization to light. You're expanding the profile of that corporation, because naturally you'll be hashtagging the organization, you'll be hashtagging your product range. You know, you want to embrace the organization that you work for, but you also want to be position yourself as the networking guru. Now, having that conversation with your senior manager is not about what's in it for me. I want to be a rock star, and, you know, which is what a lot of guys do on LinkedIn, by the way, and they lose their job. Yeah. What we're saying here is, no, be smart. You have a conversation with your management team and you say, I really am passionate about networking. I want to own the space. I want to know everything about it. I want to do all of my due diligence, and I want to support it by creating how-to videos, educational videos about our product range. Okay, so the storytelling now incorporates the products and services and customer stories, and that now that individual has got so much content to share on LinkedIn and is 100% supporting the company that they work for. So now it's no longer a what's in it for me, but it's absolutely a what's in it for us. That would be my advice.
Awesome, perfect. Now let's kind of get to the the other end of the spectrum in terms of leadership. So the C-suite, and I do a lot of work in the professional service space, so accountants and lawyers, And I was with an organisation last week where I sat for an hour listening to how we're going to do this and we want to change that and we want to do this. I said, well, that's interesting. Your managing partner, i.e. your CEO, is not on LinkedIn. Oh, yeah, I've spent hours with them. There's no point. He just won't do it. And I went, okay, that's really interesting, because you just told me that this is what leadership wants to happen within the firm in terms of change around behavior and blah, blah, blah. Yet this individual is not prepared to make one, let's face it, very small, simple change by just getting onto LinkedIn. I'm not even saying they then have to post regularly, but go, I'm not on LinkedIn. I'm now on LinkedIn because I recognize the importance that I am the leader of this this organization. So I should at least start to lead from the front around change, which then led me to write this piece around that was done on Bernard Looney, the new CEO of BP, who wasn't on LinkedIn, now has gone on LinkedIn, you know, nailing it in terms of how he can drive it. And I know that this is what you also kind of focus on, is helping the C-suite, be it C-suite current, C-suite coming out to moving into, you know, consulting type roles. So in the modern world that we are, you know, in the modern world, in the world that we are today, how important, and I know this is a leading question, how important is it for the CEO or the C-suite to have a presence online and a personal brand? Or I think you're now changing the narrative on that, I believe.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that the question you're asking is a really important question. It really is. You know, at that C-suite level, especially at enterprise level or even mid-tier, it doesn't matter, Alex. It actually doesn't matter. When you're a CEO, you're a CEO. It doesn't mean that if you work for a mid-tier, say law firm today, that you're not going to be working for the top two, you know, in 5 years' time.
Yep.
So the point with personal branding is exactly is all about reputation, and I do call it reputation branding. And the reason for that is because I think that the first question a CEO needs to ask themselves is not what type of personal brand am I going to create, which is the wrong question anyway, but rather, what reputation do I want to have, and what reputation do I want to leave on? And when you're asking those type of questions, there's two things that should emerge. The first thing is, what is my actual mission here? What am I trying to achieve? And the second part of reputation branding is, what is the legacy I want to leave? There are two fundamental questions that any leader should be asking themselves, regardless of the size of the organization. Now, let's take the first bit, and that's the mission. Any person that is serious about pursuing their personal brand as a business needs to also support that with a driving mission. There has to be a mission behind driving the purpose of the personal brand. Otherwise, it's just another thing as part of the social media landscape. It's just part of the noise. So reputation branding and mission is fundamental, and the legacy that we want to leave is also fundamental. So how do we do that? Well, we have to actually make that decision on what type of person do I want to be known for? What is my specialization? Okay, I'm a CEO. I cannot know everything. It's not possible for any CEO to know everything. But what is it that I know really well? And let me just focus on that. I want to be known for just specifically for that. Now, that CEO's tenure may expire in 2, 3, 5, 10 years' time. But the point being is, if you stay on that trajectory and you focus on it and build upon it, what happens? You get invited to keynote speaking events. You get invited perhaps to even co-write a book. You get the opportunity to be on lots of podcasts. And most importantly, it's the ability to get your comms team involved in creating a content strategy for the CEO that supports the CEO's passion specialization. So what happens now? That CEO now is known for a specific area that he or she knows for sure, gets invited to keynote speaking events. Suddenly now the industry are referring to John Smith as the expert in XYZ, and that's and he or she creates an entire narrative around that. Do you think that in 5 or 10 years' time, that individual would have a hard time finding a job replacement. Look at Sheryl Sandberg as the perfect example of what I'm talking about. She's an employee of Facebook. She has built an entire brand around her name and her specialization. Okay, she's not a COO. She actually makes media companies profitable. That's her specialization. And she owns that. And Facebook do a great job of promoting that, because they know that there are another 10 companies out there that would hire Sheryl Sandberg in a moment's notice. But the point being is that Sheryl Sandberg and Facebook are actually in it together. And that's what has to happen in any organization, for any C-suite to actually stand out, be seen, be heard, and most importantly, future-proof their career. Most importantly.
Absolutely. And I also think that, and I've, been at both ends of so again, in my previous life, our chief exec, he was actually more prevalent on Twitter than he was on LinkedIn, but we knew it was him. It was him doing it. It wasn't someone doing it on behalf of him. And what that's enabled him to do was be able to talk to the organization. So not only is it, yes, I completely agree with what you're saying around, the reputation of the organization they are the chief exec of, but it actually enabled him to get closer to the employees. Because there'll be people in there, and it's a 50,000 employee organization, who will never, ever, ever get the chance to meet him, ever.
Absolutely.
But the beauty with actually having a presence online, and again, the social media platform is irrelevant in my view. It's be where your audience is that you can then start to connect with the employee. The employee can start to buy into the vision that you are trying to create. They can then see that you as the leader are leading from the front on this. We're talking about climate change, massive at the moment. Microsoft stole the march on that with their commitment to going carbon negative by 2020 and 2030 rather, and then you see everyone else kind of scrabbling around, going, "Shit, we need to start, talking about this." And I think it's as much what you said is, future-proofing your career, giving them that voice, but it's also, what the Bernard Looney piece was talking to is the fact that he can now connect with, this multi-billion-dollar organization. Internally.
Well, the thing is that the CEO of Microsoft, Satya Nadella, he does a great job of using social media, as you rightly said, to actually engage his employees. And I don't know if you've seen his videos on LinkedIn, Alex, but he actually sits in his office and talks to his employees. They just have a conversation around topics. Yeah. Now, I can't tell you how much I love those videos. It's just, I don't work for Microsoft, but I feel I have so much respect for him because of those videos. Yeah. So what is he actually doing? He's actually creating brand ambassadors outside of Microsoft. And that's a very, very clever way of building your personal brand. So I think that his approach to personal branding and engaging his employees to actually have a real life conversations around real life pain points that are 100% relatable, that equals the outcome of those type of videos is building brand ambassadors beyond Microsoft. That's what we're talking about here.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Actually, I hadn't actually thought about that, because what people like, well, you and I don't work for Microsoft. We're talking about Microsoft, right? And it's that's like, right. Have you seen the video of that chief exec talking about this? How cool is that? Wouldn't it be that great organization to work at? Prospective clients see it, existing clients see it. That's really neat. That's a really neat way to look at one of the byproducts of this is do something for the internal audience, but actually talk about that publicly, and then hey presto, we're a prime example of it working.
We're doing it right now. But the other thing, can I just add to that, and that is this, that when an organization realizes the power of my approach to personal branding in a corporation is that customer facing executives should all be positioned as personal brands, and the company should be investing in that, because the return on investment is really, really huge. The first thing is that it creates a new PR narrative. So the narrative now is no longer, you know, us and them. The narrative now is about thought leadership. It's actually showing that the organization is doing something different. That's the first thing. The second thing is, it actually is not a push strategy, it's a pull strategy. You're attracting the right talent, because people in the outside world are suddenly now seeing the CEO of Microsoft talking to his employees. And what do you think people are saying? I want to be that person. Yeah. I want to be that person sitting in Satya's office. That's me. That's the second thing. The third thing is, it's actually proven that there was a research actually done on this, and that the sales, the people that were allowed to utilize social media to build their brand and talk about product, the company's products and services, especially using LinkedIn, that their sales were 72% higher than those that didn't do it. So that's the other thing. And I think that we just need to look at these key moving parts, because ultimately, isn't that what an organization is made up of? So there's all these amazing positive, yes, it does require a commitment. Yes, it does require an investment. But Alex, the way that I see this is that if your organization, for example, has a company profile on LinkedIn and you have 500,000 followers. I did this for a client the other day. We wanted to do a comparison, and I found the company that we were wanting to talk about. The company had 525,000 followers, but it had 50,000 employees who had a LinkedIn profile. So I said, now what about if every one of those employees had 100 connections? That's now 5 million followers, not 500,000 followers. That is massive reach. You would agree with that, right? That's just, to me, marketing 101.
Yeah, I use the same metrics when, you know, talking to our clients. And actually, if you have Sales Navigator as an organization, go into the admin function and that will actually tell you. So I'm about to go and do some training for a company after this, where Sales Navigator actually tells you how many unique connections those on Sales Navigator or Team Link have. So you can say, within this network on Sales Navigator alone, you have 100,000 unique people that you could go and talk to, which is nuts.
Amazing.
Right?
Yeah.
And that, I think, you know, before we close this off, because I'm conscious that it's late your end and I could talk to you for forever. I just want to, 2 points. We've been talking about the CEO of Microsoft, and some of our listeners were going, well, that's the CEO of Microsoft. But ultimately, it doesn't matter. Anybody can do this, no matter whether you're the CEO of a SME or a traditional kind of B2B organization. If you engage with social in a meaningful way, with everything that you've touched on, everybody can get out there and have a voice, right? Perfect.
Absolutely. Well, the other thing is that it's not just about, but Alex, yes, everyone can have a voice, but the point being is that it has to be strategic and deliberate. It can't just be a voice, because how many times do we see, and this is where I think it gets clouded, where a lot of people are, promoting the notion that just get on LinkedIn and just tell your story and be authentic, and then and then they'll come to you. And I'm completely against that. I'm saying, hey, if you are serious about building your brand as a specialist, as the go-to specialist in your niche or your industry, you have to be strategic and deliberate. You have to, and there's a two-way approach. And, you understand this better than anyone. When you social sell on LinkedIn, you've got the back-end approach, which is the social selling. Who am I connecting with? Why am I connecting with them? And how does the conversation start with that person? The other side is, what content do I want to show that person? Yep. So to me, that's strategic and deliberate. So why would I, Alex, waste an opportunity and actually post my children or my dog and cat doing somersault? It's of no value to my audience. I'm not interested. So that's where your voice needs to be heard, based on being strategic and deliberate, because you're delivering content to the people that you're connecting with exclusively. That's it.
Boom. What a way to end. I could talk to you forever, Mary. I'm in awe of your passion. I'm in awe of your your journey. It's always a pleasure, seeing your content pop up on my feed. I can't thank you enough, because I appreciate it is late in the evening for you over in Oz, for taking time out for my listeners and for me. Where can people find you? How can people connect with you? Where are you?
Well, of course, LinkedIn, Mary Henderson Coaching. Just look for the pink circle in my photo, and that's me. Or my website, maryhendersoncoaching.com, or just email me, mary@maryhendersoncoaching.com.
Awesome. I'll put all those links into the podcast. But as ever, to all my listeners, thank you very much for tuning in. I hope you found that useful and insightful as ever. If you want to be on this, let me know. If you think there's somebody I should interview on this, let me know. But enjoy whatever it is you are doing, wherever you are in the world. And until next time.